Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to a very special episode here on the channel. This is the beginning of my year-end list of my favorite albums of 2025. I always love doing this at the end of the year. It's a way to catalog what I loved throughout the year, what spoke to me, what music really stood out of the pack. If you're not familiar with my channel, I'm very focused on progressive rock, progressive metal, related genres. So that's what you're going to be seeing here, what I considered the best of the pack. And this episode, we're doing the honorable mentions list, the albums that didn't quite make the final cut. I'll be doing my top 16 album tournament in probably about a week's time. So these are the albums that didn't quite make that top 16 cut, but were also excellent and I want to talk about. And I've amassed 25 albums to talk about here, so quite a lengthy list. I'm going to try to go through them fairly quickly so you get a good list of albums that I think are really top tier quality and really great for a variety of reasons. And I've actually snuck in a bonus pick because there's an album that just came out this weekend that I wanted to highlight. And I couldn't bear to kick off anything else that was on my list. So it's really 26 on this list. But these are great albums that I recommend heartily. And some just barely missed the cut of my top 16. And if I reconfigured it on a different day, might make their way into that top 16. So it was very close. I really speak to the quality of all these albums. Don't be frustrated if your favorite album's on this list and didn't quite make the cut of my favorites list. It's just a personal, subjective opinion. And so let's jump into it. Let me tell you about my some of my favorite albums from the year that made this list of honorable mentions. All right, first on my list, and these are just in alphabetical order, so there's no ranking here. There'll be a ranking on my top 16 where I'll actually have the different albums battle against each other, and I'll pick a favorite to crown my favorite album of the year. But here it's just an alphabetical list of the 25 or 26 albums that I really liked this year that didn't quite make my top 16 cut. So first we have Songs No One Will Hear from Arjen Anthony Lucassen. He's the mastermind behind the Arion Project, one of my favorite groups of all time. He's one of my favorite musicians. And this was just a fun album that I really enjoyed, a post-apocalyptic subject matter about a meteoroid heading to Earth and all the different facets of how people would react to that, and done with some humor, some heartfelt emotion. Mostly Arjen Lucassen doing everything himself with a couple different guests here and there to kind of help him out. Some narration throughout the record to kind of give it a through line and a great concept. And I really love the ending, Our Final Song, which I think is one of the best tracks of the year that really closes this well. It's a great companion album to Lost in the New Reel that came out before Arjen Lucassen's other solo project, which has a lot of similar feeling and vibe to it, a lot of similar music to it. But I like this one just as much. I think they're both excellent and was very close to getting a spot in my top 16, but just barely missed the cut. So that's Arjen Anthony Lucassen's Songs No One Will Hear. Next, I decided to go with Asymmetric Universe and their album A Memory and What Came After. This is instrumental prog metal, but with a bit of a fusion touch to it. This came from Inside Out, one of my favorite of the newer bands that came out this year on Inside Out. I just really love their style, their groove. Some of the groovy moments that they get into really brought a smile to my face as a fan of that jazz-inflected sound, but they kept a lot of that djenty kind of heaviness at the same time. So it's just a really excellent display of musicianship from some young, promising musicians rising up in the scene. And I'm not usually a huge fan of instrumental albums, honestly, all the time, but this one really spoke to me, and I think it had a great flow to it and some really excellent, surprising, fun moments on it. So definitely makes my list here as one of my honorable mentions for the year. Next, I have Black Country New Roads, Forever Howlong. This is one of those like Prog adjacent picks, but it's a personal favorite of mine. I really like this band. You could maybe call them more indie rock or post-punk, part of this scene in the UK that's doing very creative music, kind of art rock style, with little touchstones of prog in there. Another band that does this kind of style is Black Midi. And Squid is another one. But my favorite personally is Black Country New Road. I really love their brand of melody and beauty and interesting instrumentation. They have some strings and horns and different sounds that you wouldn't expect. This album's interesting because they lost their primary vocalist from their previous albums. So it was 3 women that kind of took the forefront here and took the reins, and you get to hear their different songwriting styles and their different vocal performances, and I just found it really charming and really wonderful. So a really beautiful album with some really highlight tracks on it that brought a big smile to my face, bring a bit of that poppier energy to my list, and it was something I needed in my listening rotation this year. So definitely an album I've heard a lot and listened to a lot this year. Next, we've got Dave Bainbridge and the album On the Edge of What Could Be. This is a solo record from a very notable, great guitarist. He's played with Life Signs. He's done other solo work before as well. I believe he plays with Iona, is what I remember. And this is just a beautiful solo album. It's double disc and has a lot of different styles to it. There's some Celtic influence. There's some, almost classical style influence, folk influence, some prog definitely, and it just makes for a beautiful soundscape of a lot of different styles, several different vocalists as well, and some tracks are instrumental, some have vocal performances. There's an epic on the album that brings all of this home, all these different flavors, and I just found the style really beautiful. Some great playing, some real emotion. It evoked kind of this atmosphere and landscape, and I just really fell for it. So I think this is an excellent release from this year that more people need to listen to. It's a really great album. Then we've got Dim Gray's Shards. I love Dim Gray. This is a great album from them that nearly made my top 16 as well. It was very close. They have a bit more of this kind of pop prog energy, prog pop, whatever you want to call it. I awarded the album of the year last year to Mir, and I absolutely adore that band and how they makes these worlds of like kind of chamber pop, but with a prog feel to it. And I feel like Dim Gray kind of has similar qualities to them. They definitely have this kind of poppier aesthetic, but there's definitely some proggy undertones. The last track is a 10-minute mini epic of sorts that brings things home and all together, but beautiful vocals, great melodies, just really sumptuous sounds that wash over you and are just evoke so many great things, have folk touches to it as well, and I just really fell for this record. Just a lot of memorable earworms and a lot of great tracks that were just really beautiful to behold. They really have this gorgeous quality about how they put together these soundscapes and make it sound uniquely their own, and I really enjoy that. Next, we've got the Flower Kings and their album Love. And I think this is a step in the right direction for the Flower Kings. They're one of my all-time favorite bands. I love everything they do. Roine Stolt is the mastermind here, and he plays excellently all throughout the record. We've got Michael Stolt as well, his brother, as a full-time, full-fledged member of the group here. And it's a really great album that showcases some beautiful sides to the band. I haven't been as enamored with their recent releases, honestly, as I am of their classics from the past, from like the 90s and early 2000s. And I felt like they were kind of falling down a little bit, at least of my appreciation of it. Their previous album was kind of a disappointment to me, but this one righted the ship in a lot of ways, and I think it's a beautiful record. Yeah, it's a little bit over long, as they tend to do, and there's a lot of kind of slower, more methodical ballads here. Not as many like fireworks, symphonic prog, like high-octane energy songs here. It starts off with a real bang with We Claim the Moon, but throughout the middle of the track list, you get a lot of kind of more slower, more thoughtful pieces, but they're beautiful and they're really well made, and there's some real standouts throughout the record, and it really hits it home with the end of the record, bringing some fabulous pieces and some epic flavor. So I think it's a little bit of a return to form for the band, and it showcases exactly what Roine Stolt wants to do with this new iteration, and I am here for it. I'm excited to see what the band does next, and just grateful that they're still making music of this quality after so many albums. They're on like album 17 or something like that, and it's really amazing that they're still making high quality progressive rock, and so I'll always champion them and put them on this list until their final record, whenever that may be, hopefully far, far in the future. Next, we've got Gazpacho and their album Magic 8 Ball. I really fell for this one as well, and I'll admit I wasn't the hugest Gazpacho fan in the past. Like, they're one of those bands that are on the peripheries of like bands that I like. You know, it's kind of like if you like this band, if you like that band, you're gonna like this one. And so on paper, I should really like Gazpacho, but I've been a little bit mixed on their albums thus far. Sometimes it's a little bit slow paced, a little bit takes its time to get moving. And I tend to like things that are a bit more energetic and a bit more rocking and have that kind of a flavor. But I feel like this album really struck that balance well. Like there's some really interesting, fun, rocking pieces of music here that showcase a fun side of the band. Even the title track itself has almost a carnival-esque kind of atmosphere. But then they have these big, expanded sections that are beautiful and just really bring the emotion and the impact. Starling, that starts the record, is one of the best pieces I've heard from the band. So they're really rising up in terms of, you know, bands to watch in my estimation, and I really love this record, and it's gaining ground even as I listen to it more, and, you know, is poking its heads near my top 16 list, but just didn't quite make the cut. But it's a beautiful record, excellent, just atmospheric, beautiful progressive rock that I just really love and think has some real great qualities to it. So definitely one of the standout records in Prog this year. This was a new discovery for me. This is Joviak and their record Autofiction Part 1, Shards. And this is prog metal, but it's not too heavy on that front. You know, it has touchstones of metal. I think there's even like maybe some brief sections of like harsher vocals, but by and large, there's a kind of a poppier feel to this, honestly. I'm almost reminded of like 80s pop and things like Toto and, you know, Asia and that kind of stuff is baked into this more maybe Haken-esque modern prog metal. And it's a really cool balance. It has catchy hooks. It has cool poppier moments. There's some instrumental tracks. In fact, it starts with 2 instrumental tracks on the record before we get into the vocal tracks. But I really like this. The lead singer has an excellent voice. It ends with somewhat of a mini epic as well that delves into almost Queen-style territory. And it's really fun. It was just a brilliant, fun record. I love vibrant records that have a lot of different shifts in genre and have bright sounds and fun sing-along catchy choruses, and this really fit that bill for something that kind of blindsided me and came out of nowhere, a band I'd never heard of before, with an excellent record. So that's definitely on my honorable mentions list. Next we've got Lars, Fredrik, Froislie, and Gamle Mester. A fabulous record from the keyboardist of Wobbler, great Norwegian prog, very focused on vintage keyboards, and a bunch of like longer pieces of music here, and they're all excellent. I love when they get into kind of a cool groove and you get this kind of fast-paced, fun, almost funky style from Lars. I love the title track. I just feel like it has a perfect melody that repeats and is epic. And I love how he introduces these themes in his music, and then it comes back in a really different, vibrant way towards the end of the track. But there's a lot of great storytelling here. It's all told in his native language. So, of course, I don't understand the language here, but I really love the sounds and the vintage keys and the nods to classic progressive rock that are all through this record. And it's a really exciting journey, full of fun twists and turns that I think any fan of classic progressive rock is going to find joy here in this style. So maybe the vocals are not quite as strong as I would like, and makes me kind of crave a full-on Wobbler album, which hopefully will be coming in the near future at some point. But he does a serviceable job, and really it's the instrumentation and the scope of it and, you know, the way that it's all arranged is really what matters here. And that's done expertly well. So an excellent release, one of the standouts for the year. Next, I've got Lux Terminus and their album Cinder. This is a mostly instrumental album. There's a few vocal moments throughout the track list. We get a spot with Ross Jennings doing a guest spot on vocals on Catalyst. But a really excellent prog metal, prog rock, you know, instrumental. And it's focused mostly on keyboards, where a lot of instrumental prog metal is very guitar focused, like something like Liquid Kitchen Experiment, which has a fair amount of, you know, Jordan Rudess crazy keyboard stuff, but it also is really focused on John Petrucci and his guitar work. But here it's all about the spotlight on the keyboards and the way they're able to make it sound almost like a guitar at moments and to make it such a star and central focus of the record. And they start out with this big suite of music, this Jupiter suite, which is very cinematic, very big and expansive and beautiful, with almost like these choir vocals and such from Aspera. But then we get into more of kind of the nitty-gritty, like typical prog metal tracks, but done with a keyboard rather than a guitar focus. And it's all really well done. There's some beautiful moments. There's some really fast-paced, intricate playing. There's some really fun, vibrant moments as well. It's just a great kaleidoscope of different sounds and fun things on the record, with a cool edge to it, like the best prog metal has. And I really fell for the record. It really surprised me and jumped up my rankings. Even though, like I mentioned before, stuff that's mostly instrumental or purely instrumental is not typically my thing. I tend to really care about vocals. And like I said, there are some vocals on this record, but there's several tracks that are just fully instrumental. And they made me love it because of the variety on display, because the way that they chose their instruments well, and just made for an incredible record full of fun and exciting music that I hope they revisit and do another record soon, because this was really a highlight of the year. Next, this is as far off of the prog path as we get here on this list, but I really fell for this record, so I felt like I had to include it. This is Madison Cunningham's record Ace, and this is very much more in the singer-songwriter kind of pop vein, and it's a beautiful record of just brilliantly written songs performed beautifully with excellent vocals, great piano work. It's very much in the style of like a Joni Mitchell. You know, it's very 70s centered in a lot of ways to my ears, but still feels fresh and modern at the same time. And the pieces just really captivate me. Like, there's just so many great moments that just wash over me and provide this beauty and just stunning achievement from Madison. I think she's an excellent songwriter, one of the best in the business in this space. And, you know, this album really came out of nowhere and surprised me, and it's one I listened to a ton this year. Sometimes you need a break from, like, the heavy, intense prog and prog metal stuff, from all the instrumental fireworks and displays and, you know, all of the big epics and intricate playing and stuff. And sometimes I need something that's a little bit more laid back, a little bit of an easier listen, but still has moments of intricacy and just brilliant writing on display. And I think this album really scratched that itch this year and was one that I listened to quite a lot. And so I felt like it had to be included. If I'm really encapsulating my year in music, this was certainly one of the major albums for me that I discovered. So I'm putting it on the list here on my honorable mentions. Next, I've got Magic Pie and Maestro. Fantastic record. This is, I believe, a Norwegian band doing like a blend of AOR, classic rock, and prog, all rolled into one. There's a fantastic epic starting this record, Opus Imperfectus, part 1 at the start of the record, and then a coda at the end, part 2, to kind of finish out the record. And then you got a bunch of shorter tracks in the middle that focus more on a kind of rockier flavor. And it's just fun. It's a beautiful, fun, enjoyable record, right in the wheelhouse of the prog that I enjoy, of this kind of bright, vibrant prog with great melodic hooks that grab you, and then you got this kind of fireworks playing display by all these master musicians. It's a lot of fun, and this was in my top 16 at the outset, but then I kind of shifted things and it ended up falling just outside of it. So this is kind of one of the highest of the honorable mentions here, and I really love it. On a different day, it would be in my top 16 because I just think it's a really fun record and one of the high points in the band's career thus far. There's really no fault with it. And if you love classic progressive rock, classic rock, and all that stuff, this is a no-brainer album that I think many people have fallen for. I saw them live on Cruise to the Edge, and they really knocked it out of the park there as well. So, fabulous record, deserves special mention. One of my favorites this year, certainly. Just barely misses the cut and is one of the premium honorable mentions here that I heartily recommend to everybody. Next, we've got an album I really fell for. This is McStine Minnemann and their third record. They do this cool collaboration. Randy McStine is like a singer-songwriter extraordinaire and plays guitar. He's played with Steven Wilson, both in Porcupine Tree and on his solo tour. He has a really important spot on the Overview by Steven Wilson this year, a great extended guitar solo. And Marco Minnemann is one of the premium drummers in the scene who just plays fantastically, is one of the most brilliant technical, brilliant drummers that exists out in the world right now. And they collaborate on these albums that are really fun listens. You know, they focus on these shorter length songs with a lot of cool melodic hooks and, you know, really great written stuff, but then there's that kind of technical virtuosity that is brought on top of it, especially with the drum work and all this stuff that's going on. So it's created a really fun mix of music here, and I think these records are pretty underrated and not talked about as much as they should be in the prog world. And this third one to me is probably the best one of the three for my money. Has some almost like Beatles-esque kind of harmonies and beauty to it as well, but like I said, it doesn't sacrifice kind of this quirky proggy feel of how it's written and how the drums play and all this stuff. And it creates some really fabulous pieces of music that are fun to listen to and make for an exciting listen. It's really fun stuff. So definitely high on my honorable mentions list. I really love this record. It's a lot of fun. Next, I've got Moonletters and their album This Dark Earth, a fabulous band from Seattle. This was another one really circling around my top 16. I really love their kind of quirky prog aesthetic, eclectic, all over the place, a little bit of like kind of Zappa and Gentle Giant and all of those kind of quirky feels to the music. And there's a big epic at the end, Dawn of the Winter Bird. Some really fun, shorter, punchier prog tracks. They remind me a bit of like Echolin as well, just kind of this frenetic, cool, chaotic energy at times, but also have a real penchant for great melodies and great songcraft. And it's just a blast of a listen. I love kind of complex, quirky stuff like this. I also think about like Bubble Math, something like that, that's really quirky and different, but all comes together in a satisfying way. It's really fun. It's a little bit of a rawer sound. You know, they're more of an independent band, and this is an independent release. But that adds to kind of the quirky charm of it, that they did this themselves and that it sounds a little bit rough around the edges, but it's super fun music. And really a blast to listen to. Definitely one of my favorites this year. Next, I've got Nad Sylvan's record, Monumentata, a fabulous solo record from Nad Sylvan, who plays with Steve Hackett and sings like Peter Gabriel. He's played with Royna Stolt in The Agents of Mercy. One of the most fun, creative, interesting musicians in the prog scene today. And this album is a blast. I love every song on it. And it's a great mixture of different styles. There's some proggier stuff, but there's also some stuff that lends more into kind of a funk territory or like this 60s psych pop kind of era. You know, there's just a lot of different things that he's going for here, but it's all in his signature style and his quirky nature. His vocals are really fun and interesting as well. And I just love every track as it pops up. It's a fairly short record. It's 50 minutes long, maybe even a little bit shorter. I think that includes a bonus track, but every track has something that really grabs me. Great melodies, great songcraft, and some cool, harder edged moments. He has, you know, excellent musicians at his disposal, and it comes across expertly well. This was a fun record, and I'd put this on anytime. You know, it's just one that lifts up my spirits and is right for any mood for me because it's just fun, has those grabby, poppy hooks at times, but there's some moments where he brings in a little bit of that prog flavor, and it really works for me in every level. So fantastic record, another high recommendation from this year. Next, we've got the Night Flight Orchestra and Give Us the Moon, a fabulous record. Once again, off the beaten path, not quite progressive rock, capital P. It's more in kind of this art rock or even power pop sort of vein. Very much big, like late 70s, early 80s arena rock energy, Styx and, you know, Toto and, you know, Asia and all those types of bands. Playing stadiums, playing this high octane music that's fun, that has a lot of catchy hooks, and is just a real blast to listen to. Every song has these like catchy hooks that just really grab my ear and attention and just bring a big smile to my face. This is right in my lane of love of that like late 70s like big pomp rock kind of feel, and I love it. Queen and ELO and all this kind of stuff kind of all wrapped together in this excellent package of retro classic rock music that I just absolutely thought was a blast and fun to listen to. So I wanted to put that on my list as well. Next, I've got Pattern Seeking Animals and the album Friend of All Creatures. Crazy that it didn't quite slip into my top 16 since this is one of my favorite modern prog outfits. I'm a huge Spock's Beard fanatic, and this band features several members of Spock's Beard, obviously Ted Leonard, Jimmy Keegan, Dave Maros. You've got John Baghold, who wrote with Spock's Beard extensively throughout their post-Neil Morse era. And you get a lot of cool, great songwriting on this record, and a few expanded pieces that get into that like 10 to 12 minute range. I love how John Baghold writes music that draws from a lot of different genres, isn't just rooted purely in prog, but he obviously has influences in other arenas, and there's a lot of cool playing on display. It's solid, just like the band does best. The only reason it didn't slip into my top 16 is because I feel like it's maybe not as strong as some of their prior records. It feels a little bit like, okay, they're kind of reaching their plateau and doing what they do well, but not really passing beyond it into stuff that's a little bit more different and more exciting. But it's still a solid record, one that I listened to a ton this year, and so many great pieces on it. Every track is a great song, so you can't fault it. But for some reason, it just didn't excite me as much as some of their prior records, for whatever reason. But it's a brilliant one, well worth your time and attention, a band that you should discover because they have an already excellent catalog of music, even though they've only been around for like 5 or 6 years or so. They already have like 5 albums under their belt. So fantastic band, well worth mentioning and well worth the attention. And some of those longer form pieces are just really excellent and have a lot of variety and progginess that I really appreciate. Next, we have another kind of surprising one. This is Racing Mount Pleasant with their self-titled record. And like I was talking about with Black Country New Road, this is kind of along a similar vein. This kind of art rock, indie rock sort of aesthetic. But with horns and violin and kind of interesting instrumentation. There's a lot of slower pieces here that build and go into these epic crescendos and epic heights with these big like saxophone stabs and things like that. It's a really beautiful record that captivated me, brings to mind like different cool landscapes and different feelings and thoughts. And sometimes it's much more subdued, but just brilliantly written and great music. I just really loved a lot of these pieces and thought that there was something really fun here. And they're kind of a new band to me, at least. And I hope they continue with some great new music. This is a newer edition. This is the Reticent and their album Please. A great album in prog metal that delves into some like mental health issues. It's kind of an important album topic-wise for people who maybe don't understand all of the mental health problems that people can go through. You get musical vignettes about what it's like to have panic attacks and, you know, to have depression and to have people not quite understand you or just dismiss it as not a real disease. You know, there's a lot of those kinds of themes baked into this, and the music really personifies it really perfectly well. There are some really heavy moments, you know, there's some blast beats and growling vocals, but it really fits what they're trying to go for with the piece. Like, where it's the heaviest is where you're basically getting a musical equivalent of a panic attack, and I think it makes sense to hear these dark voices in your head kind of growling and giving you these thoughts, and I think it really showcases what it's like for people to have those kinds of moments, those mental issues. And so it was a really great album that brought to mind a lot of important things, stuff that I deal with personally that I felt a little bit seen by. So it was a really cool album to get their perspective on these important issues, and I think it was done really well. This is Inner Deeps by Royal Sorrow, an excellent modern prog record. More on the alternative rock side of the equation. They bring this kind of modern feel to the record here, but so many great grooves, so many great moments of playing, great vocals, just excellent singer, and every track has something fun to catch your ear, and that it really drives this home. It's a fantastic, fun record to listen to. Showcases a bright future for some younger musicians. This is an inside-out band their first record for Inside Out, and hopefully they continue forward with music that's this vibrant and fun and interesting. It's prog metal with a twist. It's never too over-the-top heavy, in my opinion. It sits right in that pocket of what I like with my metal, where it has a lot of tunefulness and melody and little prog flourishes, and it just is a really great record that I absolutely adore. Next we've got Cinder and the album Tower of the Sun, which I really fell for. Another record that might be off the beaten path for me particularly. It's definitely prog metal territory and has those heavier growling vocals, but they sound a lot like Opeth, honestly. They have that kind of a style, and Opeth is one of the few like death metal type bands that I can actually tolerate and enjoy, where I feel like the growling vocals fit with the music better and are more palatable, and I think they do this really well also. But to me, what really shines on this record are the moments where they go outside of that comfort zone, where they go step outside of this typical Opeth style and do their own kind of thing. Like they'll do something that's a lot more folk inspired, that has more beautiful clean singing, that kind of separates them and makes them stand apart from just your standard Opeth clone. But I found a lot of heart and emotion and a lot of energy and excitement on this record, and it makes me excited to see what the band will continue to do and what kind of different influences they'll put into it to make it their own and make it unique, because they definitely did that, added their own flavor, and have some excellent moments that are memorable and great to listen to. Next I have Clan by Solstice, another one that's just barely missing the cut here. Fabulous record. I love the positive, feel-good energy of this record, the fantastic female vocals. Sometimes they get into more of a funk edge and a jazz inflection, which I really love. And I love the song Twin Peaks, which I think is a beautiful masterpiece of just sumptuous playing. They build to this epic height. It's a great build-up and payoff, and then they quiet back down for quite a bit of time, and then they build it back up again for a second payoff. And it made me realize, as I was talking about it in my review, of why it's called Twin Peaks, and it made total sense to me. It was kind of an aha moment. But beyond that track, there's some great shorter tracks that just have this prog energy, just this positivity and beauty to them. I really love their aesthetic. They definitely key into this like Yes-like quality of positivity and joy, but with intricate sounds and arrangements, great guitar work, excellent musicians all across the board, great vocalists, and I just really fell for this record. And in another world, in another universe, this would have bumped into my top 16. It was super close between a lot of different records for some of those spots, but can't sing the album's praises more. I absolutely love this and think it's a top tier record this year. Very beautiful, well done record. Next, I had to include the new Styx record, Circling from Above. And I love this new era of Styx. This is kind of the third record in this newer iteration of the band, starting with The Mission and then Crash of the Crown. Well, I think this is probably the weakest of those three. I still think it's really solid, and I think it's a great slice of this kind of AOR mixed with prog, pomp rock kind of stuff that they do that's harkening back to their classic era, but adding a little bit of kind of this modern prog flavor at the same time. I was really taking my Crash of the Crown, which almost brought like kind of a Spock's beard style energy to Styx, while I feel like this strays a little bit away from that and more into standard kind of straightforward rock songwriting. It still is really excellent and has a lot of different variety on display, especially in the second half. You get some Queen-like moments, some almost circusy kind of music sounds. You get kind of these folkier moments. You get like this kind of Who-esque rock moment. There's so many different things here that I really love, and it's just a really quick, breezy listen. It's 40 minutes, goes by so quickly. Every track has something fun in it. They like to do these like shorter tracks, like 2-minute long tracks, and I think it works really well for the band, and there's so many standout moments. I think it's worthy of an honorable mentions list. They're still kicking, still going strong, and creating some of their most interesting records this late into the career. I think that's something to be celebrated and really interesting. All right, here we go for our kind of last minute edition here. This album just came out this past weekend. This is Tritop and their album Tritop 120. This is a band I loved who released a record, I believe, 2 years ago or so, Rise of Cassandra. And I thought that record was really great, very much in the style of like Flower King, Spock's Beard, right in the wheelhouse, even a little bit touchstones of Dream Theater, right in line with all of my favorite bands. maybe a little bit almost too derivative of some of those bands, where moments and sections would delve really hard into a sound that sounded almost straight from some of those other bands. But this one, I feel like they've marked their own path a little bit more, that they are making a more artistic statement that stands on its own, and it's impressing me, even though I've only heard it a few times, honestly, but good enough to kind of slip it into the mix here as kind of a late recommendation. It's 4 tracks long. The first track is only a minute and 20 seconds, like kind of intro track. So it really boils down to 3 main tracks. 2 are more in that 10 to 13 minute range, and then the final epic that's 23 minutes. And it's well structured. Every track has something cool, some cool like instrumental moments, and they run the gamut between these like cool classic prog sounds, bringing a bit of a modern edge to it, some great vocals. They're an Italian band. They kind of remind me a little bit of the Brock Project. They're both from Italy and have kind of this symphonic prog sound. But yeah, I thought this was a little bit of a leap ahead of their previous album in terms of originality and striking out on their own. So I wanted to mention it here, even though it's kind of the honorary number 26 out of 25 here. I wanted to mention it, so that you guys will go check it out and see for yourself if you think this is worthy of one of the best albums of the year. It's kind of unfortunate that they dropped it so late in the year, because it's going to totally miss out on anybody's year-end list, because most people have already come out with theirs at this point. But I wanted to make sure to slip it in on mine. So really cool, interesting record that I think should get more ears and attention, honestly. Next, we're getting close to the end here. I know this is lengthier than I expected it to be, but a lot of records to get through. This is Blueprints by Umphrey's McGee that I really fell for. I talked about it on the channel, and it's really interestingly structured. It's basically them taking these improvisational jams that they did on tour and morphing them into songs in the studio. So on streaming, at least, there's these different sections that each song is divided into that showcases different jams that it came from originally. And so it's a great marriage between their studio album prowess of them being able to arrange and put these songs together and do it in pristine quality, and their improvisational nature on stage that they're known for. People love this band because they're a jam band that performs expertly well live and does all these improvised jam sessions. So it's a cool marriage between those two things, and I think it comes across really well. It's a lengthy record. There's a lot to really dive into on this one, but I found it really fascinating to hear all these sections and how they tied together and how they're able to make this work into a singular piece of music. And as the Prog fan, it really spoke to me because these pieces really ended up getting very expanded, and they're basically a couple different epics on this record when you put all these disparate pieces together. So really great record. I guess I'm getting into the jam band scene. I really like Squeaky Feet's record, which almost made my honorable mentions list as well. Just fun stuff happening in the jam world, I suppose. And I like when they bring a bit of a prog flavor to their music. And then finally, I have Whimsical Creature and the album Wistful Thinking. This is the project from Michael Whiteman, who's the main guy of I Am the Manic Whale, songwriter and player. He also wrote quite a bit of music for the Spocksbeard Camp this year, also for Rio's solo album, so he's getting around and writes some beautiful songs. And this record is more on a folkier note. It's not quite as full-blown prog or, as quirky and different as I Am the Manic Whale is. This is more straightforward songwriting, but with beautiful, more acoustic elements and joined by female vocals as well. And I thought it was excellent. There's some really beautiful tracks here, and there's moments where they do delve a bit into the proggier side or some quirkier lyrics that are really fun to listen to. And it just brought that I Am the Manic Whale energy that I really love. I love that band. And so this was kind of a close cousin to that I really enjoyed. That maybe didn't quite have the full-blown, like, epic nature of that progressive rock, but a folkier, kind of lighter version, which was still a wonderful thing to listen to this year. So there you have it. 26 excellent records from this year that I heartily recommend for any prog fan, a prog metal fan, any music fan, really. I'll be coming back with my top 16, so anything that you thought, well, why didn't he include that? I would have expected that to be on his list. Most likely will be on my top 16. Of course, there's certain records that maybe just didn't work for me as well as they may have worked for you, which is fine. It's all subjective opinion. And some maybe I just never got around to listening to, so I do my best, and I try to just distill what I think is the best of the best here, according to my taste, and hopefully you enjoy that out there. So thank you guys for joining me. Let me know in the comments some of your favorite records from this year, or maybe even some of the ones you anticipate being on my top 16 list. So thank you guys. I'll hopefully catch you in a future episode. Bye everybody. Enjoy the music.